Oh, hello, Bree Sedano here, coming to you for the Cash Confident podcast. And today we are talking about getting your mind behind unrealistic goals. And this is a topic near and dear to my heart because most of the women that I'm working with in my limitless wealth offers and my private coaching, and even inside the Cash Confident community, want goals that are wildly different than where they are. Like they want things that are so, you know, yeah, just different from where they currently are. And that can be a really big challenge when we cannot get our mind behind it, right? Like when because you know that you have to believe in yourself or believe that it's possible, right? To be able to like pull it together and execute. And so there can be a lot of challenge between like really knowing what you want and really feeling that desire and not being able to get your mind to like cooperate with you. Where like you're like, I want to do this, but it seems so realistic. I want to do this, but it doesn't feel possible. So I just want to give you some ways to kind of start to like loosen the grip of your mind around some of your goals. And these are some techniques that I work with my clients on. All right. So the first thing that I want you to understand is realistic goals are based on a couple things. So they're going to be based on the past, right? The things that you've done in the past and that experience. So that way you get a sense of certainty that comes from like, oh, well, this worked in the past and so it'll work again, or this didn't work in the past, so it won't work. Right. So a lot of our realistic goals are based on the past. And also our realistic goals are based on where we are, who we are as a person, what resources we currently have, in terms of time, money, energy. And so the kind of the hard thing with realistic goals is that they're really, really close to where you currently are. And so you can feel a sense of certainty around them, where when we start to look at unrealistic goals are going to be more based on your desires and set into the future, right? So they're going to be more, just future facing instead of past facing. And unrealistic goals often require us to become a next level version of ourselves, right? Like we have to look and say, all right, well, if I wanted to go from, 500,000 in revenue to 5 million in revenue, like what would I have to do and who would I have to be able to pull that off, right? So I want to point that out because oftentimes when I'm working with clients, those realistic goals, or when we're claiming something's unrealistic, to be able to do it, it's often based in the past, and we're often now different than we were in the past. We have different experiences. We have that experience that we've gotten in the past for our successes or our failures, and so we don't have to be looking at the exact same framework. And I will use myself as an example for this. So listen, in 2021, I had spent more than $100,000 on Facebook ads. And then Facebook shut off my ads account with no warning. Right? They claimed they broke a terms of service. I didn't think so, but there was no way to talk to anybody. You cannot get a human, right? And so I lost that traffic source, which was a major, major source of my revenues. Right. And so that happened at the end of 2021, 2022, 2023. I didn't run ads because I didn't want to. I was like, I don't want to have that experience again. I don't want to do that again. That was so terrible. Right. And so now I'm basing my future on my past. Right. Because I didn't want to relive that, because it was a really, really, 2022 was a very tough year for my business. Because I was used to making a lot of money via those ads, and then all of that stopped, but I still had some expenses, and you can probably imagine, right? And so now here we are in 2024, and I'm realizing like I really need a traffic source. I really need to do this if I'm going to grow this business, if this is going to happen. And so I had to look at Facebook and realize that Facebook is different than it was in 2021. In 2021, Facebook was in a really different place. Like, and since then, TikTok has become a massive competitor. Facebook has added some customer service to ads, for people with ads accounts. The algorithms are different. I'm different. My offers are different. Everything about the whole situation doesn't really resemble the situation in the past that I found to be super painful. And so I decided that I was like, if I'm going to take this business from where it is to something that's, like 10 times bigger in the next couple of years, then I'm probably, I'm going to have to run some ads. I'm going to have to get over this. right? And so if I want that unrealistic goal, I'm going to have to do that. And it also meant that I had to face some fears and some hard stories and just some like, oh, I will tell you, I was so butthurt. My feelings were so hurt when my Facebook ads account got shut down. Like I was just truly like, oh, I felt betrayed. I know that this is, a giant multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that does not give one little single fuck about me. But I'll tell you, my feelings were hurt because my business was so damaged by that loss. So anyways, where I'm going with this is we want to be really looking at like, all right, where am I going and how can I get there? And we don't really want to be putting our past into our future because then we start to recreate the past. So if we want to have something very, really vastly different, we need to look at the future and not necessarily drag our past results and our past experiences, just knowing that like we can create something new. But if we start to drag those old knowings and feelings and certainties, then that's going to get baked into that cake. You know what I mean? Like you'll create a reality with those belief structures in place. You get to choose that. All right. So once you have the unrealistic goal set and you start to look at it and you're like, all right, well, more or less, how do I get there? You start to make the plans, right? And you start to like, you could follow your intuition if that's what makes sense for you. But also, I mean, there's some planning that goes into these sorts of things. So then we want to start to look at like, what does our mind say about this? So if I'm going to say, all right, well, I want to, quadruple my revenue next year, what does my mind say? My mind might be like, well, that's unrealistic, or that's not possible, or you're not good enough, or whatever else. And then from there, we can start to get hold of these ideas, start to notice what they are. And then from there, we can start to question them. All right, well, is it true that it's unrealistic? And then you can really gauge, well, is it true that a quadruple in a year is unrealistic? Well, maybe, but is it possible? Yeah. Are there people doing it? Yeah. Can I imagine, like, do I know any of the people doing it? Can I see what they've done? Right? Like, businesses quadruple all the time. Some businesses don't, but some businesses do. And so then you can start to be like, all right, so the reality of a 10% growth is available. The reality of a 400% growth is available. Like the reality of negative growth is available. I'm sure some businesses grow 100-fold in a year. And so you can start to see, all right, well, all of these things are possible, right? And then you can start to question, all right, well, what do I think makes this realistic? And because what realistic is just that you have past experience to base it on, right? So from there, you can just start to play with your ideas, start to loosen them up, start to ask yourself questions from different perspectives. And that could be things like, well, if I already had an operations director in place, what would this look like? Or if I had an unlimited amount of time to do this, what would this look like? Or if I was fully funded, what would this look like? Because a lot of times too, we're going to be looking at our goals from the resources that we currently have. And while that's fine, that's like a really decent perspective to take. Sometimes you can see things differently when you move perspectives, right? Like when we shift our perspectives, we get to look at the problem from a different angle inside of our own mind. So let's just say I'm setting a goal and currently I'm already stretched thin, right? Like with my time and energy. But let's just say I had an unlimited amount of time. If time was no object, what would I do here? And then you start to see the problem without that limitation, or let's just say I had a full-time administrative assistant. All right, well, if I had a full-time administrative assistant, what would I be doing to solve the, to make this goal happen? Or what could I be doing to play with this? And so when we start to play with these perspectives in our mind, so we want to build evidence that what we're hoping for, other people have done. That is something that your brain can anchor onto. So if you want to quadruple your business, just find some evidence. You're like, oh, so-and-so did the same thing, or so-and-so is doing this. And it's not really about comparison. I think it's called the Roger Bannister effect. Do you remember, I'm sure you've heard about this in school, but nobody had run the 4-minute mile for like ever. People had been trying and trying and trying. And then once Roger Bannister ran the 4-minute mile, running a 4-minute mile is just like, it's a fast mile, but it's like once that record was broken, so many people were able to break that record. So when you have evidence that something can be done, like at all, then you could be like, all right, well, if they could do it, I could do it. If it could be done, then I could do it, right? It's something for your mind to anchor onto. So, so that way you can have certainty that it could be done, right? Like, so I have evidence that this goal that I have is possible, right? And that's, to our minds, that live in doubt when we're trying to create something new, having an anchor point of something with certainty is really, really helpful. And then playing with the perspectives and really just questioning any belief that you have that's counter to the belief that you could do it. So let's just say you want, the goal doesn't even matter. You want it, but it's too hard. Be like, is it really too hard? What would it take for this to happen in a way that was easy? You start to question these thoughts, and I would write them down in your journal, and I would start to just unravel them, start to see where the thoughts are, because when we have unquestioned thoughts, it just becomes our reality. So if you want to have unrealistic goals, you kind of have to look at your mind and dissolve the realistic way that you would get there. You have to look at it and be like, all right, well, if I want something unrealistic, if I want an illogical, if I want an exponential amount of growth, then I can't be using linear thinking to get there, right? Like you can't grow exponentially with linear thoughts, with linear processes, with linear goals. So if you want something that's real big, you're going to have to wipe out some of those belief structures that are based on the past and based on where you are now and based on limitation, and start to open it up. And then sometimes another thing that I like to do when I'm working with clients on some of these things is I like to open it up and I like to check for possibility to open things up, and just well, would I be open to? So for example, sometimes, clients will be like, my business is drying up, leads aren't coming in. And I'm like, okay, well, is it possible that somebody could find you on an old podcast episode that you've done and get a link to your website and book a call with you today? And they'll be like, yeah, it's possible. And I'm like, are you open to that? And they'll be like, yeah, because then we'll keep playing with it. All right, is it possible that you could get a check in the mail for a refund from something that you forgot about from 8 years ago? And they'll be like, yeah, I guess it's possible. I wouldn't expect it. And then that's fine. But what's so interesting to me is that sometimes we can hold space to have the unexpected happen in an unfortunate way. But when we want fortunate things to happen, it's like, well, if it's not already on my calendar, then the leads aren't coming. It's like, if it's not already doing this, then it's not happening. So when you look for it, well, would it be possible? Well, would it be possible that you could find people that would want to pay you double your current rate? Okay. Is it possible that these people are already on your email list? Is it possible that they're already paying attention to you on Facebook? Is it possible? Right. And you start to play with well, is it possible? And you're like, oh yeah, okay. And it just opens up your mind. And then you can start to be like, and would I be open to this? And would I be open to receiving this? Because most of the time we get, like I just said, super closed down around the way good stuff could happen, but we stay really, really open for the way that bad stuff could happen. So anyways, these are something. I hit my computer. These are some things that you could do when you're trying to really have exponential goals. Like when you're trying to really grow in a way that's way faster than 10% or linear growth. A lot of what that takes is, really playing with the perspectives in your mind, wiping away those old belief structures, and then building evidence and starting to put more, it's not exactly faith. It's just starting to see possibilities. It's starting to play with your mind in a different way. But what if this all worked out super fast? Well, what if that hire was the best hire? What if this thing was the best thing? And it's just playing. Most of us will only play a what if game in the negative direction. So it's just playing the what if game in a positive direction. And then when we question our ideas, we can see where sometimes our mind will limit our ability to perceive what's available to us. Right? So, all right. I love you. I hope this was helpful. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Cash Confident Podcast. Remember,
Knowledge alone isn't enough to build wealth. It's what you do with that knowledge that counts. And that's where the Cash Confident community comes in. Our community is where aspiring wealthy women gather together to master money and mindset and build exponential wealth. I invite you to join our community where women are cultivating a healthy relationship with money and living the life of their dreams. Visit www.cashconfident.com to learn more.